Take my land, take me where I cannot stand. I don't care, I'm still free. You can't take the sky from me. Take me out to the black, tell them I ain't coming back. Burn the land and boil the sea. You can't take the sky from me.
Burn the land and boil the sea. You can't take the vote from me. There's no place I can't be since I found democracy. And yeah, I may have fought for the losing side, but I'm still not convinced it's the wrong side. Hi, everybody. My name is Chad Lepkes. I'm a grassroots activist in North Seattle. I'd like to thank you for watching Uphill Media, and I'd like to thank their volunteer crew for producing this show. If you can, please go to patreon.com/uphillmedia to show your support. My goal for this series of shows is to engage, educate, inspire, and empower the activists who make up the political revolution in Washington State and beyond. As we're talking, please feel free to use the hashtag #ChadTalksWith and share the show on your social media feeds, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere else. Let's build the audience and help grow the show. This is just the beginning. I first met Dorothy Gasque in 2016 when she was one of the primary organizers for Bernie Sanders in Washington's 3rd Congressional District, and she was a national delegate to Philadelphia. Now she's building on the connections that she made during 2016 and is running to represent the 3rd Congressional District in the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. Dorothy, hello. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hi, Chad. Thanks for having me.
Glad to. So, I know a little bit about your background, but I'd like you to tell the story. Can you tell us more about where you were born and some, like your superhero origin story or something like that? What was your history before politics?
Well, my history is I'm a military brat, so I was born in Virginia and I moved across the country. But I think the key aspects of my origin story are that there's 2 elements to my family culture that were really important. One, that democracy requires participation, and that democracy requires protection. So my grandfather served in the State Department, my father in the Army, and I joined the Army like my father. I deployed to Iraq in 2005 as the only woman in an otherwise all-male combat unit. At the time, women weren't allowed to serve in combat roles, yet I would find myself leading combat patrols, managing base security, and on the worst days, losing my brothers. And it was an eye-opening experience for me. And I've been waiting a decade for this moment when the progressives would come together and start working as one. And so when Bernie announced last year, I thought, I'm going to help this guy win. And I'm going to work and build the progressive movement locally. And I could see as the momentum and the steam picked up and we began to really have a lot of people wanting to get engaged in the process, people who had never even voted before, people who had never really thought about it. And they got excited by Bernie. And so I worked really hard to keep them engaged and to teach them about the process and to really just keep things going. I like to consider it like building an army, because I think that in order for this revolution to succeed, we have to be organized and we have to have cohesive strategy, and we just really have to work together to push forward and get the right people into office and keep that outside pressure on our politicians and really change things. And I think that we have the beauty of the internet right now so that we can take this movement and make it go so much faster than it did at the turn of the century, from the Gilded Age to the Great Depression.
So after the military, you went to Portland State, I believe?
Yes.
You got a Bachelor's of Science in Mathematics?
Yes.
Before we go further, I do want to bring up one of the photos that you shared with me of you in Iraq. And I was wondering if you could tell us a quick story about this photo and what it means and what you were doing because it really tells a story all by itself, but I'd love to have you tell the story of what this means. You're holding a little child and you've got Iraqi women in the background. What's the source of the photo?
Well, we were out on patrol, and we stopped off at this villa, and we were talking to the people there, and they just started handing me babies, and I just was like taking them and holding them, and it was just a beautiful moment, and everybody was just peaceful and happy, and I don't know, just it really is one of my favorite memories.
Yeah, I'm glad you share that. I'm glad you're using that one. A couple weeks ago, we were in a conversation, and you were describing how it feels to be where you are compared to where you were on that photo. And the parallel that you brought forward was you're on the front lines. You were on the front lines in Iraq, and now you're again on the front lines of democracy. How do you feel about the parallels between those?
I feel like, there are a lot of parallels. We were told that we were doing it to bring democracy to the Middle East, and actually, in a lot of ways, they had more ability to vote freely because they simply just showed up. They got this ink that just wouldn't wash off their finger to demonstrate they had voted that day, so they can't vote more than once. And there wasn't like this level of bureaucracy in order to walk in and cast your vote the way that there is here. And so watching this last election and seeing how that affected the primary, and how a lot of young people who had tried to vote for the first time were met with so much struggle because their name wasn't on the rolls, because their registration wasn't processed, or names just seemed to disappear, or people's party affiliation was changed. And it was just seeing that and realizing that our own democracy is in struggle. It really makes you have a little bit of perspective on what's going on within our own country.
You're right.
And that maybe we should get our own house in order before we start messing in someone else's.
That's a very good point. We have made things so complicated in this country when a lot of people, all they really want to do is cast a vote. And even that is not as easy as it should be. That's a really good perspective. So during the campaign in 2016, Bernie brought forward a number of his top issues, his top priority issues, things like single payer, climate change. What are the top national or even local issues in the third that you are focused on? And what plans do you have during your freshman year in Congress to deal with those issues?
Well, first top issue, and this is an issue nationally, is that we have to get rid of the corrupting influence of big money in politics. Until we deal with corruption in our own system, we are not going to be able to put forth any of our other progressive agendas, because the big moneyed interests are going to squash on it. They don't want us to regulate Wall Street. They don't want us to have single payer health care. They don't want us to, eliminate the use of fossil fuels and switch to renewable energy, because they make a lot of money with those systems. And, for them, they're doing really well. But we have an entire generation of Americans entering adulthood with less opportunity than their parents. And that's not what we should expect. But in order for us to adjust, to fix that, we have got to deal with money and corruption. But other than that, jobs, infrastructure, healthcare, I think those are the major issues that we all kind of share across the country, but they're big issues here in the 3rd Congressional District.
Okay. What kind of infrastructure issues do you have?
We have a 100-year-old bridge that connects Oregon and Washington that is not wide enough to handle the traffic that goes across it every day. And I believe it was given a D on the last grading. So, it's a whole lot of traffic across that bridge every day. And, we're risking people. We actually did have a bridge collapse just north of here on the 5 freeway a few years ago.
Yeah. Yep.
So, we have tons and tons and tons of bridges that are, on the verge of falling apart.
Right. And these are major bridges, not just like potholes in the road on a city street or something like that. We're talking major things.
Yes, major things. And
Getting
a lot
back
of
into
transportation issues.
Sorry, there's a little bit of delay. That's good. I remember where I was in 2010 when the Citizens United decision was announced. And I've always considered campaign finance money at that level to be against the intent of the founders. Corporate money in politics is treason, is a phrase that I use. I know that you've been involved in that particular issue for a while. So what are your ideas on how campaigns should be financed in the United States? And what efforts specifically are you involved in to get that changed? Even without being a candidate for Congress, I know you're involved in some pretty specific things.
Yes, well, I'm involved in Represent Us. We've been building a chapter here locally to try and make some changes within their system. Their big goal is to pass versions of the American Anti-Corruption Act at the local and state level, and then eventually at the federal level. And so I think, the biggest thing is I fully endorse the American Anti-Corruption Act because it goes beyond just how we finance our elections, but also, the process of lobbying. We've had a lot of deregulation in how our politicians are regulated, and that kind of happened back in the 70s. And so since then, we've had, just massive amounts of corruption that is affecting our system. I believe in publicly funded elections. I think that is the easiest and fairest way to ensure that nobody's being influenced by money, and then everybody has to work for that grassroots engagement. But for me, my campaign is committed to grassroots fundraising and to grassroots engagement. And that's how we are going to deal with the system. I'm going to go in without being attached to any strings.
Nice. We do have one question that is being posted in the comment section. Do you have specific thoughts on the subject of healthcare? This question comes from Marcus Aurelius from 2,000 years ago. No, I don't think so. But that's his title on the comment thread, and he's wanting to know your specific ideas on healthcare.
My specific ideas on healthcare, to begin with, we need to pass Medicare for All, HR 676. And the next is really kind of looking at how, in other ways of cost control, we need to be able to negotiate the prices of prescription drugs. And, if the pharmaceutical companies can't make money because of research and development, we have lots and lots of research universities that can take over that. We can invest the money through the National Health Program.
Okay. That was another one of Bernie's big issues. But beyond just issues, what have you learned about campaigning from Bernie Sanders and the campaign that we went through last year? And what will you be able to use over the next 2 years to build your own campaign? What are you taking from 2016 that you're going to be using?
I think the biggest thing is being authentic, staying true to yourself, sticking to the issues, and not being afraid to talk to people who might be ideologically different from you, because when we start talking about things basically about the economy and economic security, we aren't that different.
We're not that different. Now, I see John is bringing up your page with the $27 donation button. That's awesome. One of the things that I did want to ask you specifically is you're running as a Democrat in this race.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you could talk about how you're going to reach out to independents and people who might be frustrated with the Democratic Party label. What does running as a Democrat mean to you? And how do we reach out to everybody else, especially the people who were frustrated in 2016?
Well, I have a lot of friends that I've made through this movement who are staunchly independent, and they don't have faith in the Democratic Party. And I mean, it's totally understandable, having been on the inside of the convention and having had to experience firsthand how out of touch with reality the party seems at that level. I can see why people don't have faith. But we live in this system, we're not going to change it overnight. And especially here in Washington State with our top two primary system, it is statistically unlikely for anyone to make it through the primary who is not a Republican or a Democrat. So I think that I acknowledge that, their feelings are justified. I think right now the party is polling less than Trump because, they did do a lot to turn off young voters. I mean, when 85% of us supported Bernie, and then they told us that, we had pie in the sky ideas, everything we believed in is impossible, but we can, we have the internet and we can talk to people in other countries and we can see that these systems work, single payer works. It's not impossible.
Not impossible. All it takes is enough people getting involved, enough people saying enough is enough people who say that I don't care what it takes, I'm going to get this done. We've got goals. We've got legislative goals. We've got community goals, infrastructure goals. How do we actually get something done? Let's work together to get it done. Speaking of working together, I know that you are applying for endorsements from all over the place. And I'm wondering what national groups that you've reached out to try and get an endorsement from them, and what have been the reactions so far?
So far we're still kind of in the process. These questionnaires are long and pretty intense to fill out. So we're still in the process. We're seeking currently an endorsement from Democracy for America. Mm-hmm. We are in, I guess, the second part of their endorsement process. And then we're in the middle of filling out an endorsement for Our Revolution, which I think is one of the more important ones that I want to make sure that we receive. And then the Progressive Caucus and Bernie-crats, the Washington State Bernie-crats.
Okay. How do you think those endorsements and efforts are going to help with your fundraising and promotion? Do you know what kind of offers they have and what kind of opportunities they provide?
Well, with Our Revolution and Democracy for America, I mean, primarily it's the promotion through their email list and to their members that will hopefully help us generate more excitement, more energy, and kind of build up our grassroots fundraising. I mean, grassroots fundraising is slow. It's slow. It takes a lot of effort to keep building that momentum and really trying to make sure people understand that if they want, politicians who aren't bought and paid for, that means that we're all going to have to chip in. I like to say that, our future is worth at least as much as a subscription to Netflix or Hulu.
Okay. Last week, I had Tina Pawlowski on, and I asked her similar questions about how we're going to bring other people in and what other connections are we making. And Pete Hammer is in the chat from Lewis County, and he's asking about how your support has been from the established Democratic Party organizations in Washington State. Like, what I know that you go to a lot of those meetings. What have been the reactions of people when you say that you're running?
Well, at the state level, the party has largely been really receptive and helpful. Both our previous chair, Jackson Ravens, and Tina have been, supportive. But at the county level, it's not as supportive. A lot of it's kind of behind the scenes. It's a little bit less obvious, but I think one of the biggest things that bothered me the most was that initially they targeted my campaign manager. They tried to convince her to quit. They told her she was committing political suicide if she was going to run my campaign. And so I think, that bothers me because as a leader, I don't want that to fall on other people. If they have a problem, they need to bring it to me.
Yeah. And the Democratic Party should be all about encouraging new leadership to come up and explore options and try new things. And I've been watching some of those issues, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to deal with them over the next 16 months. Let's see. Speaking of 16 months, what is your campaign plan over those 16 months? What are you going to be doing differently than campaigns of the past, or maybe even the campaigns of other people in the race right now? What is your plan, and what kinds of things specifically are you going to be doing to reach out to all of the counties and LD organizations and precincts, etc.? How many counties are in the 3rd? Can you tell us
7.
a little bit more about the district?
We have 7 counties. It's about 10,000 square miles.
Wow. Okay, so it goes from Pacific County on the coast all the way to Clackamas, is that right? Or Klickitat?
Klickitat.
Yeah, we don't have a map this time, but the 3rd Congressional District is most of southwest Washington. So I'm not seeing any more questions. So how about one last question from me, and then I think we can go out with a special treat that I found. So the question is, you worked hard during the 2016 campaign to build a united 3rd Congressional District so that we could get the delegates going to the National Convention for Bernie Sanders. Is your campaign building on that as well? And how good is the sense of unity among the Sanders progressives and other people who supported Bernie Sanders in the 3rd that you can capitalize on?
Well, yeah, that's the biggest goal, is to kind of rebuild the grassroots engagement we had for Bernie's campaign across the 3rd Congressional District. We're reaching out to a lot of the activist groups, more so than the traditional Democratic Party groups, to try and make sure that we're getting, good connections built again. I wouldn't say unity has been all that great. We've had a lot of sort of fighting. I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of anger still and a lot of hurt still. And so we do kind of have this issue with those of us who are still working within the party, kind of not necessarily having good communication with the ones outside the party. And I think that, I want to build those bridges, and I want to get people working together again, because I think that when we're in the same room again, we're going to drop some of that mistrust, and we're going to really be able to build a movement that can withstand, and to have the understanding that we all can do something, and that if, for those of us who are, working hard on reforming the Democratic Party, we're not stopping other people from doing what they want to do, and what they're doing, working within third parties or working with nonpartisan organizations, isn't stopping us from doing what we're doing. And I think that it's all really important. I think that the pressure needs to come from all directions.
Right. I agree. And another thing that I've been preaching is we're not going to be able to deal with the problems that revealed themselves in 2016 until we can sit down and have a conversation. We have to learn to trust each other and understand each other before we can expect to be understood. And that's on both sides of that divide. So that's a really good point. So I'm not seeing any other questions. I do see, well, actually, I did see one. The Russia thing that is in the news all over the place, with the media drumming up all of this frustration. How do you see that? Do you see that as an actual news item or just another distraction? Because I see it as a distraction.
Well, I think there's definitely probably some issues going on with financial corruption, probably to get around sanctions. But I don't think the Russians are the reason our democracy is in crisis right now. If we had had a strong, good democracy, then whatever they threw at us wouldn't have mattered. I mean, they try to say that the DNC leaks issue is where the problem began. But for those of us who've been organizing and were organizing within the movement prior to those emails being leaked, already knew that there was massive collusion between the media, the party, and the Hillary campaign. We had to deal with the Correct the Record paid internet instigators coming into our organizing space and disrupting it.
Yep.
And interfering with what we were doing. It was, so what the party did and what the media did and what the campaign did, is separate from the exposure to what they did.
Right. Okay. So the video that I found that we are going to exit out with is you introducing Bernie Sanders when he went down to the rally in Vancouver on March 20th, just before the precinct caucuses. Any stories that you want to tell really quick about what you guys were doing and how you felt being on the stage introducing this man?
Well, I mean, it was an incredible honor to be able to introduce Bernie Sanders. I mean, he's been one of my political heroes since he stood up to the Iraq War. So I've been following his career for a decade, and to be able to introduce him was just amazing. But it was definitely nerve-wracking. I had never spoken in front of a crowd that large. I think that was my second time really doing public speaking. And I had a few days' notice to throw that speech together. They also kind of messed up on the timing on getting me onto the stage. And so I had to edit my speech on the stage. But luckily, nobody noticed.
Well, I've watched it a couple times, and I think you did great. So let's play that video and roll it out. I want to thank you very much for joining us, and we will do this again sometime. And I also want to specifically call out to other congressional candidates in the third. This is an open show, so if you would like to come on and spend a half hour, that would be absolutely fine. I'd love to have you. I know there are at least 2 names that have filed right now, with a couple other names maybe jumping in. But I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. For everybody who's watching, thank you for spending a half hour. And again, please spread the link and let's get this message out. And let's roll the video. Have a great evening, and I'll see you guys next week. Thank you, Dorothy, very much.
Thank you.
I deployed to Iraq in 2005, attached to a combat unit as the only woman. At that time, women were not allowed to serve in combat roles, but because my maintenance team was attached rather than assigned, my day-to-day could include leading combat patrols, participating in raids, taking cover from mortars and RPGs, manning the 50 cal, guarding the base against attack, being on the lookout for telltale signs of IEDs, searching vehicles, and losing my brothers. Serving in a war zone taught me what to look for in a leader because my life often depended on it. I learned to look for strength and compassion. I learned to look for selfless service and integrity. I learned the courage to do what's right in the face of opposition and the ability to motivate others to strive to be their best. A great leader leads by action and not by command. A great leader would not only speak out against prejudice, they would fight to end discrimination. They would take a stand against those who would prey on the most vulnerable. They would not be complacent when faced with a war of contrivance. They would fight against a war that has no purpose, that could go on to claim the lives of the daughters, sons, soldiers, and civilians. My ideal leader would have fought against a war without purpose that would lead veterans to return home with scars on our bodies and in our minds and on our souls. My ideal leader would continue fighting to ensure we would receive the care we deserved and the benefits that we had earned. My ideal leader is Bernie Sanders. I know firsthand the importance of his good work because the services the VA provides saved my life on more than one occasion. The law that Bernie authored as chair of the Veterans Committee did a lot to ensure the VA will continue to save lives of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines for many years to come. Bernie was on the right side of history when he chained himself with others in protest against discrimination. Bernie was on the right side of history when he was against DOMA and Don't Ask, Don't Tell. When I first volunteered to support Bernie Sanders, no one told me it was going to be easy. No one told me the friends I would make, the challenges we would overcome, and the amazing journey it has been. And while it has been difficult at times, it has always been worthwhile. Look around you. This is history in the making. This is our moment to get behind what is right and to do the good work that needs to be done to secure the future we believe in. we want to look back at our lives and say we could have done more? For Washington voters, the most important thing you can do this week is to show up to your neighborhood caucus this Saturday, March 26th at 9 a.m. and support Bernie Sanders. If you don't know where your caucus location is, please take out your cell phone right now. Type in this address, vote.berniesanders.com/WA. Our participation is what is meant by government for the people, by the people. Volunteer today and join me in this political revolution. And join me now in welcoming to the stage the next President of the United States,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. All I can say is